we've kind of been talking a little bit about it, dancing around it, and I really want to get deep into it now because to me the whole plan of deception and all the theatrics of it is the most interesting and fascinating thing to me. It's honestly pretty comedic how they fooled the Germans with some of the tactics they employed. So walk me through how the Allies were able to pull off that deception. I mean, they set up entire armies of inflatable tanks and trucks and appointed Patton to this fictitious army.
Yeah, I mean they the Germans expected, as you saw in the movie Patton with George C. Scott, that they expected Patton, who they felt was the Allies' best general, to lead the invasion wherever it took place. So Patton was being a bad boy at the time. We know from watching the movie what he was up to, between slapping soldiers and making comments about our Russian allies at Knutsford in England in front of a women's group. So Patton was on double secret probation, to use an Animal House term right there. And they had planned for Patton to get back into the war after D-Day. But so they took advantage of the fact that their most famous general, who again the Germans considered to be our best, would be the leader of this fictitious army that was being set up. So with a lot of feedback from folks in the theatrical business and the prop business, the prop world, and everything else, this plan came together to build this fictitious army around the man that the Germans thought would lead the invasion. And they would build these rubber tanks and rubber trucks that were being built in Woonsocket, Rhode Island at the Alice Mill. And we interviewed workers who worked on them, and they had no idea what they were doing. She's like, they just told us to paint these rubber tanks, and that's all we did. We painted these rubber tanks. And in this Alice Mill in Woonsocket, Rhode Island, also built all the barrage balloons. But nobody knows why they're doing all this. People back then weren't asking questions. They were just told to build dummy tanks and trucks and jeeps and planes. And these guys are taught this radio traffic to go back and forth to make it look like it's going between, various camps and being picked up by. So, I mean, the whole thing was a play. It was a ruse. And I thought it was just one of those things that probably saved thousands of lives. And when you look back on it, people still talk about, and books are written about Operation Fortitude and what went into it and everything else, that it's just one of those things where when you have control of everything, you've got control of all the German spies, you've got control of the skies, you've got control of anybody who could rat you out, you've got control of them. So it's just amazing that nothing ever got back to Germany, that someone said they're rubber tanks, which would have set off the alarm bell saying, why do they have rubber tanks? Well, they've got rubber tanks because they're not going to use them in the area we think they're going to use them. So that's kind of the layman's description of kind of how successful it was. And they also, again, I think the turning of the double agents was really big, because they were feeding information back to the Germans saying, no, this is where it's going to happen. It's going to happen at Pas de Calais. So the Allies had turned these agents, these German agents, to working for them. Now they're feeding the Germans, it's going to be Pas de Calais. Even if you think it's Normandy, it's going to be Pas de Calais. And so the Americans really had the entire setup. It was a very well-oiled machine in terms of the deception plan.
Yeah, and it was very creative. I mean, talk about thinking outside the box with coming up with this kind of stuff. But I think you're right. The turning of the double agents was huge because the Germans really believed the spies and the information they were getting, and they really doubled down on it.